السيد عدنان أمين، الرئيس التنفيذي لمؤتمر الاطراف كوب 28. اهلا وسهلا بك على شاشة سكاي نيوز عربية.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
خليني ابدا معك بما الذي تقومون بتحضيره لمؤتمر الاطراف كوب 28 الذي سيتم عقده في الامارات وسيجعله مختلفا عن باقي المؤتمرات السابقة وخصوصا من ناحية المخرجات.
Well, you know, we've had 27 COPs already. This is COP 28. Every COP has had some kind of incremental advance. But at the same time, the climate crisis has grown exponentially. So the COP process hasn't been able to keep up in terms of solutions with the severity of the climate crisis. We want this COP to be a game changer. We want this COP to be a differentiated COP that focuses on solutions and results, and that doesn't just have another incremental result, but really creates a new dynamic for climate action that is based on a new investment framework where we recognize that the investment in the climate of the future is going to be our economic growth path. So we're focusing on a number of areas. The first, of course, is the energy transition. To achieve the decarbonization targets of the Paris Agreement, we have to achieve levels of decarbonization in our energy use and our industries that is about 43% emissions reductions by 2030. That is the outcome from the IPCC, the scientific panel that looks at climate change. If we want to keep in alignment with the Paris goals, that's the level of decarbonization we need to achieve. That's very ambitious. That requires all of industry, all of government solutions. The second will be on finance. We have to fix climate finance. We know there's a lot of liquidity in the international system, but it's not being applied to climate solutions. There are different barriers and obstacles. One is government policies are not the right policy frameworks. We need incentives for investment in climate-related projects. We need to create the enabling environment for finance to come, and we need to create a kind of pipeline of bankable opportunities for energy, for industry, for agriculture, across the whole value chain of climate that can begin to drive the transformation at a much faster rate. And we need to have the reform of the international financial institutions to do that. The third part of it is, you know, lives and livelihoods. Climate change touches the lives of everybody around the world today. We've seen the impact of disasters, of floods, of hurricanes, of fires, of drought around the world. It's impacting everybody's lives. Just yesterday, we were looking at the floods in New York City, unprecedented floods. Recently, the immense tragedy we saw in Derna in Libya, which has taken the lives of so many innocent people. The massive floods we had earlier this year in Pakistan, covering 1/3 of that country, affecting 30 million people. These are the kind of disasters that are touching everybody's lives, and we need to focus on the adaptation issues, and we need to focus on how do we solve the issues that people are facing. We have specific areas we're focusing. The food systems of the world are under stress. We have the potential of future harvest failures as a result of climate impacts. We have to create new sustainable food systems that are capable of creating food security in the future. So there are a number of issues that we are looking at.
دعنا نأخذ هذه النقاط كل واحدة على حدة. أنا أبدأ بداية بموضوع انتقال الطاقة الذي تحدثت عنه. من المعروف بأن هناك اليوم بكوب 28 إعطاء دور مهم لقطاع الطاقة العالمي ولشركات قطاع الطاقة بالتحديد النفط والغاز لأن يكونوا جزء من المحادثات ومن المخرجات. هل تعتقد أنكم قادرون على دفع هذه الشركات ربما لإعطاء التزام بجدول زمني أسرع لخفض الانبعاثات ونزع الكربون من العمليات؟
Well, what is very clear is that the oil and gas sector, global industry, is beginning to understand that it has to be part of the solution to climate change, not part of the problem. I think there is a huge public demand in the world that there has to be a decarbonization process of oil and gas that's much faster. So while we build the energy system of tomorrow, which is going to be the low carbon energy system based on renewables, we have to decarbonize the energy system of today. That's where the oil and gas sector comes in. So what we are doing is engaging with the oil and gas industry. Many people see them as the villains. There's a huge NGO kind of movement that says they should not even be allowed to attend COPs.
True.
Our position is that if there is a sector of the economy that is a large part of the problem, how can you have to solve the problem without having them at the table? They need to be at the table, they need to be progressive, they need to be constructive, and they need to understand their responsibility and to be accountable for it. And I think they understand that. They have huge capital resources, they have huge technological capability. They need to deploy that capability in looking for a low carbon system of the future. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do at the COP is to create this kind of environment where we can begin to have this constructive discussion, but also for the oil and gas sector to sign up to commitments that will begin to really move the needle on carbon emissions at a much faster rate than we have been doing so far.
يعني برأيك أن ما كان يطالب به ما يسمى بمجتمع المناخ أن يكون هناك اتفاق على إنهاء دور الوقود الأحفوري هو أصبح ربما بعيد، والحديث اليوم هو عن ربما تخفيض هذا الاعتماد وأن يكون هناك عمل على القطاع نفسه ليصبح أقل تلويثا، صحيح؟
You know, if you look at the energy sector today, energy underpins all of economic activity. All the goods and products and agriculture that we rely on day to day is reliant on the current energy sector. We have to start to move into a new energy environment very quickly. Mm-hmm. That transition needs to be speeded up. But in the meantime, there is a very strong call to phase out fossil fuels.
Yes.
If we were to phase out fossil fuels tomorrow, I'm a person with an environmental background who has worked in renewable energy. Even I know that stopping fossil fuels tomorrow will be an economic disaster. It will hit the poorest hardest. So we have to be responsible for a well-managed phase down of fossil fuels. And I think the phase down, as far as we're concerned, is inevitable. Mm-hmm. The market conditions, the technological development is moving in that direction. The question is, how fast will it happen? And we have to make it faster while we build the system of the future. Mm-hmm. And I think on the outcome of the COP, I see, many actors more and more committing to the idea of phasing down. Mm-hmm. And what we need to do is make sure that phase down is well managed, it's responsible, it's practical, but it also happens quickly.
بدي أنتقل الآن إلى النقطة الثانية اللي ذكرتها في مستهل حديثك، وهي موضوع التمويل المناخي، إن كان من الدول الغنية للدول الفقيرة أو من المؤسسات المالية العالمية أو حتى من البنوك متعددة الأطراف للتنمية، أو حتى نتحدث هنا عن القطاع الخاص. ما هي الأجندة التي يعمل عليها كوب 28 لتحقيق تمويل مناخي عادل عالميا؟
That's a very important question. Finance is at the center of the solution on climate. Finance is going to unlock climate action in a way nothing else can. So there are different parts to this discussion. There have been a lot of commitments on financing from developed countries in previous COPs that have not been fulfilled.
True.
That has created a climate of mistrust in the climate negotiations. If we are going to have positive outcomes on climate negotiations, we need to restore that trust. And that starts with the first item, which is that developed countries need to be able to provide evidence that they are reaching the target of $100 billion in climate finance annually. We have made that a very strong part of the COP platform. We have made that demand to developed economies. They understand the importance of doing this, and we're confident that we will be going very much in that direction. So hopefully we will be able to achieve that. If we can address the issue of trust, what we then need to look at is two parts of it. Mm-hmm. One is that the international financial institutions are not equipped to provide financing for climate at the scale and at the speed and with the efficiency that we need to do it. Climate finance needs to be affordable and it needs to be accessible. Mm-hmm. So we are working to push the reform of the international financial institutions to make concessional financing available at scale. Concessional financing is important in one way, which is that it is the enabling condition to allow private capital to flow much more at scale into climate action. There is a lot of capital available, there's a lot of liquidity in international capital markets today. It's not being deployed for climate action because of the risk mitigation aspect for climate action is not there. So international financial institutions have to be able to provide that, but governments need to be able to provide the enabling environment for investment to be successful. Policy frameworks need to be in place, and the enabling infrastructure for that investment needs to be in place.
كيف تردون على الانتقادات التي طالت دولة الإمارات كون الدولة المستضيفة لاجتماعات مؤتمر المناخ كوب 28، كون هذه الدولة هي ربما نستطيع أن نقول لاعب أساسي ومنتج للطاقة التقليدية في العالم؟
I think you're right. There was an immense amount of criticism because especially in the West, in NGOs and civil society organizations, there's this kind of mindset that the UAE is a petrostate, that it's oil and gas dependent, and that all it does is export oil to the world. The reality is that the UAE has become a very diversified economy. Today, only 30% of its GDP is oil dependent. 70% of the UAE economy is non-oil. That's a hugely diversified economy, coming from where we did only a few years ago. If you look at the last two hosts for the COP, the UK and Egypt, both are fossil fuel producers and exporters. But they did not come in for the same kind of criticism. So we were aware of this criticism, but the way we respond to that criticism is through our actions, through our consultations, through the design of our agenda. We're focusing on decarbonization and energy transition. We're focusing on lives and livelihoods. We're focusing on climate finance and on including everybody that needs to be at the table on the climate discussion. It's a very progressive and very inclusive agenda. And I think as we've engaged over the last year, and as you know, our COP28 President-designate Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber has been on the road for the last year, talking to every constituency in the world, from heads of state to ministers to NGOs to universities, talking about the message of COP28, that this is the COP of solutions, this is the COP where we want to make the transition to a better future. This is the COP that has to be transformational. So we moved from a position where I think in terms of commentary about the UAE COP, it was 70 negative to 30 neutral or positive. Today, it's 30 negative and 70 positive and neutral. So I think perceptions are beginning to shift. But at the end of the day, we have to prove through this COP that the UAE is a modern, diversified society that's progressive, that is a platform for agreements with others, and that shows what results can be achieved.
سؤال أخير، ما هي الرسالة التي ترسلها للعالم من هذا المنبر ونحن تفصلنا أيام عن كوب 28؟ بماذا تعيدون العالم؟
Our commitment is that this COP will be the COP that changes direction. This will be the COP that will be transformational. This is the COP that you have to be part of. This is the COP that will be inclusive and that will find solutions. And we invite the world to Dubai at the end of November, beginning of December, to join this COP, because this COP is designed to create a better future for us all.
شكرا لك سيد عدنان أمين على هذه المقابلة، وكل التوفيق لكم في كوب 28.
Thank you very much.